Imagine living a life of luxury, surrounded by wealth and privilege, yet feeling that something is missing. Now, picture that, as you turn a corner in your life, you meet a simple person with a pure heart, someone who makes you question everything you thought you knew about happiness. This is the story of Austin, a New York millionaire who has everything most people dream of: money, status, and power. But inside, he is empty. The extravagant parties, the endless work, the superficial relationships, none of it seems to fill the growing void within him. Then, in a small town in Missouri, he meets Georgia, a young woman who works at a cafe and has one big dream: to find true love. Unknowingly, this free-spirited woman with a sincere heart becomes what he desires most in life. But how can he, living in a world of expectations and responsibilities, allow himself to follow his heart? Between the luxury of Manhattan and the tranquility of the countryside, between the pressure of a family that expects everything from him and the true love calling him to a different life, Austin will have to make a decision that could change everything. Will love be enough to break the barriers that money and status impose? Or will he lose himself in the path of a life he didn't choose? The answer to this question is about to transform not only Austin and Georgia's lives but also the way we all view the true meaning of love. Get ready for a story of impossible choices, unexpected love, and the struggle between what the heart desires and what destiny demands. This is the story of Rich in Love, the impossible choice of a millionaire for true feeling. Georgia had always known that life in a small town like Missouri would be simple, but she never imagined it would be so fulfilling. The local cafe, which she helped manage, was the center of all town conversations. The residents knew her by name, and she loved that bond, that sense of community that only a small town could offer. The mornings were peaceful, and the customers always arrived with a smile, ready to start the day with a hot cup of coffee and a piece of cake she lovingly prepared. That particular morning, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee seemed to float in the air, mixed with the soft scent of vanilla. Georgia was organizing the utensils in the kitchen when the doorbell rang, signaling that another customer had arrived. She didn't pay much attention at first, but then she heard firm, decisive footsteps approaching the counter. When she looked up, what she saw made her stop for a moment. It was a tall man, dressed in a dark, perfect suit. He looked like he had stepped out of a movie, with a serious expression, yet something melancholic in his eyes. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, but there was an undeniable charm to it. The contrast between his impeccable appearance and the simple, welcoming atmosphere of the cafe left her momentarily speechless. He looked at her, and the softness of his gaze made Georgia feel a wave of nervousness rush through her. She quickly composed herself and forced a smile. "Good morning," he said in a soft but firm voice, with a slight New York accent. He seemed to not belong to that place, but somehow, here he was. "Good morning," Georgia replied, trying not to show how nervous the encounter was making her. "What would you like today?" "Black coffee, please. And a slice of apple pie if you have it," he replied in an almost casual tone, but his eyes were attentive to every movement she made. As she prepared his order, Georgia couldn't help but notice how out of place he seemed, yet at the same time, as if he were observing and trying to understand this simple environment, as if it were something exotic to him. The silence between them seemed heavy, as if a non-verbal connection was being established. She grew a little more nervous while arranging the cup and plate. Then, when he looked at her again, Georgia felt her heart beat faster. "Are you from here?" he asked, breaking the silence. "From Missouri." "Yes," she replied, feeling the conversation becoming easier now. "I was born and raised here." "I'm from New York," he said with a slight pause, as if questioning the need to share more about himself. "I'm here on business. Needed a break from the big city." "I understand," Georgia replied with a smile. "Things are calmer here." "Yes, it seems that things here are more genuine," he said, with a sparkle in his eyes, as if he had touched something very deep within himself. "It's something I don't find much of over there." This comment made him even more intriguing to Georgia. It was the first time someone so clearly distant from her world spoke about the simple life with such respect. And the fact that he was there in a small cafe, with a young woman like her, seemed surprising for him too. What could a man from New York, seemingly so far from her reality, want in a town like Missouri? As he paid the bill and prepared to leave, he turned and said, casually, yet with a touch of sincerity, "I'll be back tomorrow, Georgia." She watched him walk away with long, determined steps, but she felt a knot in her stomach, a strange feeling, as if the world around her had subtly changed, even though she didn't quite understand why. In the following days, Austin showed up at the cafe every single day. He always sat in the same spot by the window, holding a coffee in one hand and a distant look in his eyes, as though thinking about something far beyond the present moment. Georgia couldn't help but notice him. He was so different from the men in town. They were usually simple, didn't care much about appearances, and to be honest, often didn't even have time to chat. But Austin wasn't like that. He always started conversations, asked how she was doing, and even though his appearance was so far removed from Missouri's simple reality, he genuinely seemed interested in her. After a few weeks of casual encounters at the cafe, Austin finally invited her to something she never imagined, a trip. He was heading to Manhattan for business, and instead of going alone, he suggested she accompany him. At first, Georgia was frightened by the idea. She had never left Missouri. Life on the farm was all she knew. The invitation seemed surreal, like something out of a movie. How could a simple girl like her fit in a city like New York? But Austin was persuasive, and his charming way of speaking without pressure, without pushing anything, made her consider the possibility. After all, who wouldn't want to see Manhattan? "I never thought I'd leave Missouri," she said hesitantly, when he invited her again. "Why not? New York has so much to offer." "And you deserve to see it," Austin replied with that light smile, but with something deeper behind it. She spent the night thinking. The invitation seemed tempting, but at the same time, terrifying. Georgia knew her life in Missouri was peaceful, but she also knew something was missing. What would her life be like without any adventure? "All right," she finally said, decided. "I'll go." The flight to New York was an unforgettable experience for Georgia. She had never flown before, and looking out the window, the vastness of the world seemed enormous and at the same time, intimidating. Upon arriving in the city, it was as though she had been transported to another reality. The chaos and energy of Manhattan were visible on every corner. The busy streets, the towering skyscrapers, the luxury stores. Everything seemed so distant from her life in the countryside. Austin greeted her at the airport with the same captivating smile and a lightness that made her feel at ease, even amidst the whirlwind of people. "Welcome to the city that never sleeps," he said with a touch of humor. They took a taxi, and the journey to Austin's hotel was a mix of emotions for Georgia. She felt like a tourist, admiring everything she saw through the window. The city was breathtaking, but at the same time, overwhelming. She tried to hide how out of place she felt, but Austin seemed to notice it in every glance she cast. "Don't worry, you'll get used to it," he said while settling into the seat beside her. The city has a way of winning people over. The hotel where Austin was staying was luxurious, something Georgia had never imagined seeing up close. The lobby was vast, with modern and sophisticated decor. She felt a bit out of place, but Austin guided her calmly and confidently, showing her the way to the room. When they arrived, he gestured for her to make herself comfortable. "This is my retreat in the city. Feel at home." Georgia looked around, feeling overwhelmed. "Everything here is so different," she murmured. "I know. I felt the same way when I first came here," he replied, with a sincerity that Georgia hadn't expected. "But now, I wouldn't trade it for anything." Later, Austin took her to dinner at an elegant restaurant with a view of Central Park. Georgia was enchanted by the view, but couldn't shake the feeling of being a stranger in this world of luxury. They talked about their lives, the differences between Missouri and New York, and Austin shared a little about his routine, the pressure of being successful, and the expectations that came with his social position. "I've always been used to this lifestyle," Austin said, looking out the window. "But sometimes I wonder, is it worth it? What really matters? Sometimes, all of this seems so empty." Georgia felt something deep in his words. She realized that, despite all the wealth and success, he was also searching for something he hadn't yet found. She didn't know what that meant, but something inside her told her that this conversation wouldn't be the last. The weekend passed quickly, and soon Georgia found herself immersed in the glamour of New York. But behind all the sophistication, she began to realize that there was more to Austin than the simple millionaire he appeared to be. There was a weight on his shoulders, an invisible pressure that he tried to hide. And soon, Georgia discovered that this pressure came from his own family. At a formal dinner with his mother, Carolina, and some family friends, Georgia felt even more out of place. Carolina was an elegant and imposing woman, with critical eyes that observed every detail of Georgia. She seemed distrustful and distant, as if she were measuring every word Georgia said. "So, Georgia, you're from a small town, right?" Carolina asked with a forced smile. "Yes, I'm from Missouri," Georgia replied, trying to stay calm. Carolina glanced at Austin and after a moment said, "I truly hope you're not getting caught up in these adventures. You have a position in life, Austin. A future. You can't be distracted by things that aren't from your world." The tension in the air was palpable. Austin looked at his mother, clearly uncomfortable, but didn't say anything. Georgia sensed that something was being said between the lines, something Austin hadn't shared with her. After dinner, she followed him to his apartment, where he seemed more distant than ever. "I know what you're thinking," he said as she settled onto the sofa. "My mom has a way of controlling things. She wants me to marry someone from my class, someone who meets her expectations." Georgia felt a pain in her chest. She had never imagined that something like this could interfere with their relationship. But looking at Austin, she saw he was torn between following his family's expectations and his own desire to live something real, something that truly mattered. "I don't want to be just a distraction for you, Austin," Georgia said, her eyes filled with sadness. "I don't want you to have to choose between me and your family." Austin moved closer, holding her hands firmly. "I don't know what to do yet, Georgia. But what I do know is that being with you makes me feel more alive than I've ever felt." He seemed genuine, but the doubt in his eyes was unmistakable. Georgia knew that, despite everything they had experienced together so far, their future was still uncertain, and the real battle was only just beginning. The sun was beginning to set over New York, painting the sky in golden and red hues. But the atmosphere between Georgia and Austin was far from warm. The days at Austin's apartment were starting to feel tense. Every word spoken between them seemed to carry more weight than the last, and the growing pressure from Austin's family was affecting their relationship in painful ways. That day, Austin received a call from his father, who was pressuring him to make a quick decision on a major investment, a project that could further solidify his name in the business world. But what his father didn't know was that Austin's real decision no longer lay in the business world. It was in his heart. "I need some time, Georgia," Austin said after a tense phone conversation. He seemed exhausted, but determined. "I have to resolve some family matters." Georgia, who had stayed by his side all weekend, felt a sharp pain in her chest. Austin was becoming more distant with each passing day, and his cold, evasive words were starting to chip away at her trust. She didn't know how to deal with it. She cared for him deeply, but at the same time, she knew that the pressure he felt from his family was destroying what they had built. "Don't you see I can't keep going like this?" Georgia said, her voice choked with emotion. I can't be part of a relationship you don't even have control over, Austin. I'm not a solution to your family problems. Austin took a step forward, trying to reach for her hand, but she pulled back. It's not like that, Georgia. I didn't want it to be like this. I just need to sort things out. She looked at him deeply, her eyes filled with tears, and took a deep breath. I'm not a solution to your expectations, Austin. I'm a real person with feelings. And I don't know if I should keep waiting for you to choose me, when your life is being decided by other people. Silence hung between them like an invisible wall. Austin wanted to say more, wanted to explain, but he felt that words weren't enough. And at the moment Georgia turned to leave, he knew she was making the hardest decision of all, taking a step back. The days that followed the argument were filled with painful silence. Austin struggled in vain to understand his own feelings, but the truth was that he felt crushed between his love for Georgia and his obligation to his family and his career. He couldn't decide what he truly wanted, and it was draining his energy. Georgia, on the other hand, returned to Missouri, but she couldn't stop thinking about Austin. Even though she was back to her simple routine, she felt an overwhelming emptiness. How could she be happy when a part of her was still in New York, with Austin, and with all the dreams he had awakened in her? Fate, however, had other plans. A few months later, Georgia was invited to an art fair in Chicago, where she was exhibiting some of her paintings. It was a unique opportunity for her, a chance to showcase her work in a new and exciting place. She was nervous but also excited. When she arrived in the city, what she didn't expect was to come face to face with the last person she ever thought she'd see. In the middle of the fair, while Georgia was trying to focus on her paintings and the people passing by her exhibit, a familiar figure appeared at the door of the hall. Austin. She froze for a moment, unable to believe he was there. Austin, with his same captivating smile and serious gaze, was standing at the entrance, watching her with an expression that mixed anxiety and hope. Georgia walked toward him, her heart racing in her chest. "What are you doing here?" she asked, trying to hide the surprise in her voice. "I had to see you, Georgia," Austin said, sincerity in his eyes. "I couldn't stay away from you. I realized I was running away from what really mattered." She looked at him, skeptical. "Austin, you can't just show up and think things will go back to the way they were. I can't live in a relationship where you're torn between your life and what you really feel." Austin took a step forward, more determined than ever. "I know you're right. I'm a man divided, Georgia, but I don't want to be like that anymore. I want my life with you. I know it's not simple, but I'm ready to fight for what's real." Georgia looked at him, her conflicting emotions starting to settle, and felt a knot tighten in her chest. She still loved him, but the pain of uncertainty and doubt wasn't so easily erased. "I don't know, Austin," she said softly. "I can't keep going back and forth. I need more than empty words." Austin took her hands firmly, his eyes locked on hers. "I don't want you to wait any longer, Georgia. I want to be the man you deserve, not the one always in conflict. Let me show you that I can be the man who chooses you, without hesitation." She stared at him for a moment, the conflicting feelings inside her slowly dissipating. "Are you serious, Austin? Because I can't live in doubt anymore." "Yes," he replied with the certainty she needed to hear. "I'm serious. I choose you now and forever." Although Austin had finally made his decision for Georgia, the challenges were far from over. Now he had to face the resistance from his own family, who still insisted that he should marry someone from his class. Carolina, his mother, was unwilling to easily accept that Austin had changed his priorities. She was a woman of strong convictions and a well-defined vision of what her son should do with his life. Austin and Georgia were walking through Central Park, one of the rare moments of calm amidst the hustle and bustle of the city, when Austin shared his concerns with her. My mom isn't going to accept this, Georgia, Austin said, his eyes reflecting the tension he was trying to hide. She pressured me again last night, saying I have a responsibility to the family and to the legacy of our fortune. Georgia felt a tightness in her heart. She knew Austin was torn between his love for her and the weight of his mother's expectations. I don't want you to choose between me and your family, Austin, she said, her voice softly laden with emotion. I just want to know if you're willing to fight for us. Austin looked at her, his expression one of someone seeking an answer within himself. He felt that he had to choose, that the choice was between the life he had always known and the life he wanted to build with Georgia. But he knew he couldn't keep ignoring the happiness she offered him. I won't let myself be defined by her expectations anymore, he said finally, his voice more firm. I know what I want, and it won't be easy, but I'm going to fight for it. That night, Austin called his mother for a difficult conversation. He knew that confronting Carolina would be inevitable, but that didn't stop him from doing what was right for him. Mom, I've decided, he began, his tone serious. I've decided that I'm going to follow my own path. I've chosen Georgia. Carolina looked at him, surprised and clearly irritated. You're losing your mind, Austin. It's not just about what you want. It's about family, legacy, responsibility. I understand what you're saying, Mom, Austin replied, but my life can't be defined by your expectations. I'm going to live my life the way I think is right, and I choose Georgia. That's what I want. The tension in the air was palpable. Carolina remained silent for a moment, before finally responding, her voice cold. You'll see, Austin. One day, you'll realize the mistake you're making. The pain Austin felt confronting his mother was deep, but he knew he was making the right choice. He turned to Georgia, who was waiting patiently in a cafe nearby, and felt a wave of determination fill him. He couldn't go back now. Now that Austin had decided to follow his heart, he and Georgia began to face the challenges of being together, without the invisible barriers that once separated them. But the difficulties didn't disappear overnight. The resistance from Austin's family and the world he had left behind were always present, creating new tensions. During a visit to Missouri, Austin realized how different Georgia's life was compared to his own. The small town, where everyone knew each other, was a stark contrast to the frantic pace of New York. Although he was enjoying the peace, he also felt the pressure of not fully belonging to this world. Are you feeling uncomfortable here? Georgia asked, as they walked down the quiet street of her hometown. Austin looked around, trying to understand what he was feeling. No, actually. I feel at peace here, but at the same time, I feel like I don't belong. I'm not a simple person, Georgia. She smiled, with a hint of sadness in her eyes. No one needs to be simple to be happy here. Life is more about who you are than where you are. Those words from Georgia struck Austin deeply. He realized that he was feeling insecure and out of place, not recognizing that his happiness didn't depend on the circumstances around him. He looked at her with gratitude, knowing that she was there to help him find the peace he had longed for. I'm going to need some time to get used to this, he said, as he held her hand. But I'm willing to try. Georgia squeezed his hand with a gentle smile. That's all you need to do, Austin. Try. I just want you to know that no matter where we are, if we're together, it will always be enough for me. As night fell over Missouri, Austin felt, for the first time, that he was in the right place. He knew there were still challenges ahead, but now he was ready to face them alongside Georgia. Time seemed to slow down for Austin as he made the most important decisions of his life. He knew the days of indecision were behind him. By his side, Georgia had been the foundation that kept him steady, but still, the weight of responsibility continued to chase him. He looked at her with a deep gaze, filled with love and also a silent anxiety. The decision he had made wasn't easy, but it was the only one he felt was worth it. The pressure from his mother, Carolina, still lingered in his mind, as well as the expectations of society. Austin knew that his family's business, the investments, and the legacy of his name were all on the line. His family did not accept the idea that he was willing to give it all up for a simpler life, with a woman who wasn't part of his class. But now, he was certain. He would choose Georgia. He would choose her not as an act of rebellion, but because she was his true happiness. That night, he arranged a dinner with Carolina, intending to put an end to that chapter once and for all. He sat at the table in a luxurious restaurant in Manhattan, the place that represented everything he was leaving behind. Around him, the shine of gold and silver, the murmur of sophisticated conversations, and the soft sound of an orchestra in the background. None of it mattered anymore. "So, Austin," Carolina began, her tone seemingly cordial, but it was clear she was preparing for one last attempt at manipulation. "Have you thought carefully about your decision? Our family's legacy cannot be ignored. You have a position to fulfill." He took a deep breath before responding. "I've thought a lot about this, Mom. And the truth is, I can't keep living a life that isn't mine. I've chosen Georgia." Carolina's reaction was immediate. Her face twisted with a mix of shock and anger. "You're ruining your life, Austin. Don't you understand what's at stake?" "I understand perfectly, Mom," Austin said, with a calmness he didn't know he had. "But what's at stake is my happiness. I can't keep obeying a life that's been imposed on me. Not after I've learned what really matters. I choose to be happy with Georgia, not with what you expect of me." Carolina fell silent, her eyes filled with resentment, before finally saying in a low voice, "You'll regret this, my son." Austin knew in his heart he wouldn't regret it. He had made his decision. The true love he felt for Georgia surpassed all external pressures. The day of Austin and Georgia's wedding arrived, and although it was simple compared to the luxury that Austin's family would have preferred, it was a celebration full of meaning. They married in a small chapel in Missouri, with only their closest friends and family present. The ceremony was intimate, without pomp, but with all the heart. When Austin saw her walking toward him, dressed in a simple white dress, with the most genuine smile he had ever seen, he knew he had made the right choice. Georgia, with her heart pounding, looked at Austin and saw, not the millionaire from New York, but the man she had always known he could be. He had chosen the simple but meaningful life by her side, and she felt that their love was enough to sustain them both, regardless of the adversities. "What do you feel now?" she whispered, holding his hand during the ceremony. Austin looked at her with a serene smile. "I feel like I've finally found what I've always been looking for, Georgia. It's not money nor fame. It's you." She smiled, feeling like the richest woman in the world. "Me too, Austin. With you, I don't need anything else." After the ceremony, they headed to a simple reception in a garden near the chapel, where friends and family embraced them and celebrated their union. Their love, free from external expectations, blossomed. In the months that followed, Austin and Georgia faced new challenges, but always as a team, side by side. Austin opened a small philanthropic business, using his fortune to help those in need, a decision he made to distance himself from the pressures of his family and the corporate world. Georgia continued painting and opened her own art gallery, where she displayed works inspired by her life journey. Their love was not easy, but it was real. And in the end, that's what kept them together. They proved that, regardless of the barriers life placed in their way, true love, built on trust and understanding, would always triumph. And so, Austin and Georgia lived, not in luxury, but in the true richness of love, creating a simple life, but one filled with happiness together. And so, Austin and Georgia proved that, in the end, what really matters is not what we have, but what we choose to live. True, pure, and barrier-free love was stronger than all the expectations of society, money, and status. They show us that true wealth is in the heart and in the choices we make. Sometimes, love is the only thing we need to be truly rich. Now, I want to know, do you also believe that love can overcome any obstacle? Comment below, share your thoughts, and leave your heart in the reply. If this story touched you, don't forget to like and share it with your friends. After all, stories like this deserve to be spread to the world. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, what are you waiting for? Subscribe now for more touching stories like this one, and hit the bell to never miss an update. Because here, true love never ends. See you in the next video, where we'll continue to explore stories that will touch your heart and show what really matters in life.